Do you suffer with niggling knee pain or perhaps even back pain when you ride your bike? Did you know that that could potentially be down to how you set up your cleats on your shoes? Keep watching, I'm going to run you through some simple setup guidelines. So the interface between your foot and the bicycle pedal is such an important part of cycling biomechanics. If you get stuff wrong here at this sort of first contact point, the effects of that can get knocked on up the kinetic chain and can be the reason why you get problems even in your back. So what I'm going to look at, or what I'm going to try and explain, is some sort of basic setup principles. Now, this isn't going to solve every bike fitting issue and niggle out there. Sometimes it does require a more in-depth investigation by a qualified bike fitter. This is more about, if you've never fitted a set of cleats before, how to get those bolted on your shoes in a sensible and sort of biomechanically correct position, not just sticking them on in the middle as some people do. Obviously there's adjustment range in a cleat, quite a lot of adjustment as it happens, so you can adjust fore, aft, and also left and right. And as I said, that adjustment is there for a reason, so it's not the right thing to just pop your cleats straight in the middle and go from there. So much adjustment available on cleats, where do you start? Well, let's have a look at the forward and aft adjustment first. The accepted norm there is that biomechanically speaking, we are most efficient or most powerful if the pedal spindle sits underneath the ball of our foot. So there's a simple way to find out if that's the case, and I'll show you how. Okay, so what do we mean when we talk about the ball of the foot? Well, it's pretty easy to find. It's easy if you look at your foot without a sock on, as I'm doing here. We're talking about the point at the end of the first metatarsal, which is this kind of knuckle behind your big toe here, this sort of bulbous edge to the inside of your foot, which you can feel really easily. So that's one. And then the second point is just back from the little toe here, the last knuckle on the end of the fifth metatarsal. So those 2 points there. So what we're trying to find is that big protruding bulge. We find the middle point there. It's easy to sort of generally push with your thumb and feel where that is. Find the center of that. And what we're going to do is just make a small dot on the shoe. Then I'm going to do the same on the outside of the shoe, just behind the end of my little toe knuckle, where that fifth metatarsal ends. Okay, and at this stage, that's all we need to do. Now I'm going to take the shoe off again. And you see, this is why I haven't bothered to mount the cleat at this point, because it's much easier to do this without the cleat on the shoe. And then I'm going to take a straight edge and just line up the mark I made on the outside of the shoe with the mark I made on the inside of the shoe. I'm going to take a pencil and just draw across the carbon sole. What makes cleat fitting even simpler, and something that people don't often know about cleats actually, is whether it's Look or Shimano or whatever system, there's generally a mark on the outside of the cleat which dictates, or indicates I should say, where the center of that pedal spindle will be once you're clipped into the pedal body. So this little mark on this Look cleat here is quite easy to see. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to line that mark up on the line that I've just made on the shoe, and simple as that really. I now know that when I bolt that cleat on, that's going to be orientated underneath the ball of my foot, ready to sort of have optimal power transfer through to the pedal spindle. So that covers the fore and aft placement of the cleat, but what about the angle? That's arguably even more important, because that can be primarily one of the causes of knee pain particularly, and other things up the kinetic chain. So it's a tricky one. There can sometimes be a bit of trial and error. A fundamental mistake that's often made is that people try and pedal with their feet in dead parallel straight lines, sort of almost assuming that that's the optimal position. It's not. The optimal position is whatever your body dictates is correct for it. Now that may mean that your feet want to be heel in, they might want to be heel out, but it's really important that you let them kind of do what they want to do and not fight against it. If you could imagine your foot wanting to be in this position and you're trying to pull it back into straight, there's a huge amount of twisting forces that go up through your knee and your hip, and that can lead to obvious problems further down the line, especially with the repetition of the cycling motion. So a technique that someone showed me once, which is really useful for this, is to just sit up on a kitchen worktop or a table. I'm going to show you now. So if I just hop up on the workbench, allowing my legs to kind of go completely relaxed from the knee down. What this does is it allows your kind of lower limbs and feet particularly to kind of hang and sit where they naturally want to sit. And what that tells you is quite useful for your cycling position, because if my feet were to hang like this, for instance, I'm obviously completely exaggerating that, or like this, whatever, it's quite important that you take that into consideration when you're setting up your cleats. It's, as I say, it can be a huge amount of force that you're twisting your foot around if you're trying to make it do something it doesn't want to do. So yeah, that's a good start point. Now, for the actual setup of the cleat, sometimes it can be quite confusing when you look at the shoe and you think, right, okay, I want to put my heel in. how do you translate that to the cleat? Which way am I twisting it? I don't know. So again, another technique that I find useful, I put my hand out straight as if that's my 12 o'clock. I put my shoe on the top, and then, for example, I want my heel to go to the outside a bit, okay? So now what I do is I keep that position, I turn the shoe over, and that shows me that I need to orientate the cleat in this direction. I just run through that again. So if I use my hand as my 12 o'clock, pop my shoe there, I want to turn my shoe heel out, turn over, and then I know which way that cleat is going to have to be adjusted. So I can just tweak that adjustment across, tighten up those bolts, clip into the pedal, and go from there. Okay, so we've covered the sort of fore and aft adjustment of the cleats. You can see there, we also covered angular adjustment of the cleat. But there's also one other way that you can adjust a cleat, and that is just left to right. That's called Q factor, that's the technical term for it. It's a tricky one. Adjusting Q factor is probably moving into an area where you're starting to need the advice of a professional bike fitter. It's not something that I personally would recommend people play with that much. The fore and aft and the angular stuff, that's fine. It's pretty easy to find your norms and what works for you with that. But with the Q factor, as a general rule, it's probably best to start off somewhere fairly central on the adjustment range with that. And if you feel like you need to adjust it, as I say, probably time to seek the advice of a qualified bike fitter. Okay, so now I've clipped the shoe into the pedal. So hopefully you can see there's a range of adjustment in either direction, a few degrees in either direction. And what that is there to do is to just give your foot that freedom to move a little bit as you push down and put power through the cranks. What that float isn't there to do really is to give you your optimal position. You should always try and set up what feels most comfortable to you in the middle of that float range, so that, you know, whatever your preferred position is, you've still got that little few degrees in either direction. The other thing you need to look out for when you're setting up cleat angular adjustment is that you're not clipping heels on frames, or when you come around to this point in the pedal stroke, rubbing all the anodizing or even material away from the crank arm. If you find yourself doing that, and that is something where you feel your foot is comfortable in that position, at that point I'd probably be looking to seek the advice of a professional bike fitter and maybe look at other solutions that can help you overcome that. As I said at the start, none of this is going to solve every problem to do with shoe and pedal and cleat stuff, but yeah, hopefully it's a really good start point, and certainly far better than just bolting your cleats on in the middle of the shoe and hoping for the best. All right, so that's the basics of cleat fitting. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave them below, and also keep an eye out for more how-to videos and tech videos coming soon.